to know. I mean, they will do anything for you. They will basically they first of all try to put you into a kinship relationship. You know, ukti, my sister, or my aunt, or whatever is a nice phrase to call you. And then you become one of them. One of the difficulties for Americans is that friendships take enormous amounts of time in the Middle East, and you can't just know a person and see them next month. It's almost a daily basis that you have to see people, so it needs enormous amounts of time. I have never found it difficult to be a woman in that society at all, although everybody always asks me that question. But I would say the things that I admire most are the sense of family and the caring for one another. I like the way the young treat the old. I mean, all these things are all part of the fabric that draws people closer into a stronger kind of unit. But I find that very admirable. But at the same time, I think it's very difficult for Americans who want their freedom and want to be able to move on their own and do their own thing.
Thank you, Andrea. It's wonderful. I'm Hala Buck, and I have a different situation than what Kate was starting to do, because I am from Lebanon, and I do talk about the Middle East, and especially women, because I agree with you. That is the main hurdle of people trying to understand the Middle East, and I've written this book, as I told you. So my question to you is, how do I, as a Lebanese American, bridge, which is the whole point of my book. I'm already a bridge by the fact of where I was born, how I was born, and who I married, which is an American Foreign Service officer. But how do you perceive doing that, coming from, you talked about the books written by people from the Middle East that tend to be full of, they have already absorbed the Western bias and don't know it. And so I'm looking for that in myself because I know I have that. And yet what I want to do is present a really an honest and balanced way so people don't say, oh, well, she's giving such a rosy picture of the Middle East. I'm sure it's not that. So do you have any ideas of how somebody from the area who's also American can handle that very tricky
Well, let me say, first of all, that it seems to me many of the books written on the Middle East by people who perhaps don't have, who come, like, take Naguib Mahfouz. Have you read Palace Walk? My book group read Palace Walk. And all the people in the group got a totally wrong impression, I think, from that book. They all said, oh, isn't he abusive, this man? He's the father in the family who goes off on his own but keeps the woman pretty much cooped up in her house. And but what I took from that instead, and I don't know if it's because I lived in the Middle East or if even if a Middle Easterner would think that way, but this woman, the whole book was showing her connections within her family, how the children all came to her and she supported them. She solved their problems. If they had to go to the father, she had to be the intermediary with the father. I mean, in my mind, her role was so much stronger in this family, even though she was kept from going out in public arenas, and he was out having fun with women and things like that. I mean, I think the people who come from the Middle East and write on the Middle East are often misunderstood to begin with. And I found the book, what is it, 1,000 Suns, thank you, 1,000 Splendid Suns, that if you've read that book, again, Americans take this as just a terrible, the men are horrible and they desert the women, or they are very abusive to the women. And yet all these men are dead in the end, and the women go off with the money and the family and the children, and somehow it seems to me that the women are the winners in that situation. It may be that they're abused along the way, but they have means of coming together and solving their problems in one way or another. So that's people who are writing about the Middle East who are already misunderstood. And you have the extra added burden of trying not to look defensive. And, people often say I'm defensive about the Middle East because I'm not condemning everything that happens. And recently, I wrote an article a year ago or so to a magazine and they gave me 1,500 words, and so I thought, well, this is a short amount of space. I'll just put in a lot of statistics about Arab women, and then they can see for themselves that things are not what people expect them to be. Well, the editorial board turned it down because I didn't talk about honor crimes and domestic abuse. And so, I mean, that's what happens. You almost can't win, but you have to wend a very careful path.
Hi, my name is Carrie. Thank you for your lecture today. I'm in a grad student security studies program in the DC area, and my question relates to, we have a class that's, I haven't taken it yet, but I'm very curious, and I think it ties in with your lecture. It's called strategic culture. Mm-hmm. And the idea is bridging the gap with culture and understanding one's culture to then figure out how to handle the country from a security standpoint. I wondered if you could just kind of comment. It's a very popular class, and I'm torn if I believe there's a balance, but I just wonder, especially in the case of the Middle East and your extensive background, is that, kind of relates to the other question, is that really something that, I don't know, feasible is too trite of a word, I don't know, could you just comment on that kind of idea? Is from the security standpoint, are we going in the right direction by looking at those kinds of avenues?
Well, I certainly think that it's a good thing to, get along well with the local people in Afghanistan, for example. But I think it's extremely hard to take 18, 19, 20-year-old soldiers and try and teach them all there is to know about Afghan culture so that they don't make any mistakes. I think what happens in the end is that they become extremely accommodating and transparent, try to put everything out on the table. I mean, that's the American way of being culturally sensitive. And I don't think it's received as an especially good thing. I mean, I think Afghans themselves tend to be reticent about giving out information, being totally transparent. So everybody's always wondering, if this is all it is, there must be something beneath it as well. So, I mean, it just in the motions, the gestures, the talk, it's very difficult to get all this across to people. And I think John Kerry had it right when he said it's better to use trusted intermediaries. But how you find trusted intermediaries is another question. One question leads to another. That I think people of the culture are much more likely to understand what's going on. I myself move into this mode when I go to the Middle East